So what do we do as we're warriors ourselves? You know, that's kind of my interest too. Is like, how do we impart, you know, kind of what you're saying, like how do we get into our own body and self to notice the way these things are impacting us. And it took my son, you know, going through some very dark times to find his way out of that, you know. I could provide a little bit of help, you know, along the way. But I know children, you know, it's been really it's been stressful to watch and deal with. And really led, honestly, I would much rather make pieces about dreams. But, you know, like dream sequences or something. But that really led me to that work of, wait, why are we such a warring nation? You know, why are we such warring people? And why are we creating, you know, and why does this keep going? You know, this trade war marketing, I mean, all the things that are going. You know, it's like, what am I supposed to do? You know, how can we counter this movement as parents, as Americans, as, you know, humans in the global community, as part of the oppressors, you know, of the murdering, you know. So those are questions I have, and moved by what you said about what's going, you know, your encounters in Northern Iowa. It feels similar. It's that same force counterforce, you know. I mean, we don't have literal bombs going off, but they're going off in the hearts. See it.
Heart feeling. I wanted to ask the panelists about addressing maybe notions of vision, and we could talk about that in terms of, you know, the aspiration or the healing. This idea that enlightened society might happen by small pockets, small containers, webbing, or even that sort of vision of no agenda. In our brief discussion earlier, Susan, you brought up, you know, there's wisdom that arises in the moment, the pure invention of the moment, and then kind of countered against, you know, the individual emerging from generations or history or lineages, context, and time. And I think with that micro-macro picture, yeah, what's the role of vision? Can we look forward, be inspired, or what have you? Translation.
I'm thinking about, well, connecting also to what Kate and Susan were saying about this idea of how mechanized people are, and how meaning that we sort of operate, many of us operate a lot like machines, in the sense of, as a way of coping, as a way of, with the different things that we numb ourselves to, that we're kind of faced in the news, in our lives, in our jobs. And so that, I think, is a big obstacle to being able to look at vision and look at what we want, what I want, what collectively we want. And so I see a big, I think that connection between the individual demechanizing ourselves, seeing what we see, hearing what we hear, really connecting to our senses and sort of waking up again, and the capacity to then connect with each other and begin to think about, well, what are the problems and what do we want? And often I'll go through a process like this, and people can come to some kind of agreement on what the problem looks like. And then when asked, what do you want? It's sort of like a wall is there, like, and then if somebody tries to create it, we use a lot of images in our work, so we'll sort of turn each other into sculptures to show rather than say what we're hoping for in a situation. And, you know, usually like that's impossible, or that's magic, or that's just not unrealistic, or that's cheesy, or that's, like a bunch of hippies holding hands or something. But I think that process is really important, that struggle to be able to create some kind of vision, and sometimes it begins with sort of stereotypes or something that doesn't quite seem real, but I think that opening up that process of creating a vision with a community begins to deepen, and people develop that capacity, just even that practice of asking, what do I want, or what do we want instead of this? But that's actually some of the hardest work, is crossing that barrier of I don't even know what I want.
Such a huge step to break that cycle that that I know I have on my level, and then it's easier for me to see when I go into a high school. Well, you're stuck in that loop. And I guess that word gap comes up again. That I'm comfortable. It might suck, but this is familiar, and this is where I go, and this is my thoughts are going this way, and that fear or kind of groundlessness when you even break that, it's like, well, it's kind of a little bit better to just go back to this. We know this. An essay has 3 paragraphs. Play has an ending, and it gets sewn up, and everybody goes their way, and we know what happens to them. And even if the vision shifts or changes, or that's a really powerful thing to even be able to create a space where I can step into the possibility, right? You're talking about opening all these possibilities in that early morning dancing.
There were 2 branches of the Quakers, I found out, because I went and tried to find my great-great-grandmothers. They were copious note takers. So I went back to the records at this college where there were archives to try to find the meeting notes to see if there was any mention of her or her family or the Underground Railroad. So I was like pouring through these archives, nothing. And I told the librarian after hours, I couldn't find her, A, and B, they were so busy disciplining each other, they didn't notice the end of the Civil War or Lincoln's assassination or anything. It was like, what the hell? And so then I was like, oh, these were really serious and really unfriendly people. And but then I did find her in this other library. And she was a Hicksite Quaker, which I found out through the research. They were the progressive. Thank God. They were not the slave owners. They were the progressive Quakers, but the bottom line was there was no pastor, no creed, no oath, no nothing. They sat, and waited for the divine to enter the space, and then whoever spoke on behalf of the group, or spoke specifically to someone in the group if that was the quake, And so then there was silence, everybody took it to heart, and then out of the silence, so the silence was the organizing principle. It's kind of like, the corridors is whatever the organizing principle. And I thought, well, that's really, that's really admirable. That makes sense in terms of, a little bit in terms of your questions. So I just wanted to mention
I have a little vision that I would like to, I think one of the keys to our enlightenment is to follow what's happening. And that it's like, this is kind of a Taoistic, but I'm sure it's good. The idea that the Tao that can't be said, there's the Tao that can be said, which is the everyday reality, and then the Tao that can't be said, which is like the emergence of what's happening, right? And so often focusing on that, like what happens, like Annie's here, and I did one of my pieces. She did a piece with me. We did together.
Right.
And Annie was working on eating disorders. And I remember one time we were working on the addictive quality of wanting. It's like an addiction. And so she said that her thing that she fantasized about. You're probably gonna remember this differently than me, but the thing that she fantasized about eating, that she would just chocolate cream pie, right? So she says chocolate cream pie, right? So the Tao that's unspoken is the way she said it, right? Chocolate cream pie. And she did the most sexy dance on that signal about chocolate cream pie, talking about what it was like to have chocolate. And to me, that's the wisdom of the unknown arising through these little details of experience that actually informs us about what we want. Rather than me saying, I want this, I have no idea what I want. Me in the Tao that can be said, but the Tao that can't be said, if I just follow and bring my awareness to that, it's like, I know exactly that wisdom needs a chance to be supported and brought out and embodied, because that is for my own little bias, is one of the big steps in learning what that is. Until I embody it, I don't know what it is. Until she embodied the equality of that, she didn't know it was about sensuality and changing the way that you treat yourself, and how treating herself comes in many, many other more actually satisfying ways, which you've really integrated into the time. So that's my vision.
Thank you. I think the body is really, the embodiment practice is really essential to warriorhood.
We have a few minutes. It flew by, but it's nearly 8, but I thought I'd open it up for questions if anyone wanted to take advantage of this wisdom sitting up here. If there were any questions in the field that I didn't.
So much wisdom
Wisdom
sitting
out.
out here.
Wisdom of the room, let's say.
Thank you so much.
I keep thinking, Tamara, about something you mentioned to me about creating stages in public parks. And I just, could you just share that again? And because we're talking about vision and we're talking about creating spaces and like opening gaps in our ordinary so that the meta can be met or arise. Could you just?
Yeah, that came from, I had the chance to be in India I'll tell the story about it, this last December, and I was there with an organization called Jana Sanskriti. They have like 40 theater troupes across a good chunk of India doing this work in rural villages and perform for audiences of like, 3, 5, 7,000 people. And as part of this festival, we went to a village and they had this rally and all the signs were in Bengali. I had no idea what they said. And when I got a translation, it was basically rally for a free stage in every village. Art is not the property of the elite. So these rural villagers who, through the work with the theater, through their own process, were basically, rallying to get resources from the city to create a stage. So these lovely, round, very simple stages. I saw one that had been created. It was covered, but it was a circular stage. And I just thought it was so powerful to, you think about, you rally for this and for human rights and for food but then to rally for the arts just seemed really powerful, that was important enough to the community because they knew that this was powerful, that the theater had become really powerful for their identity and their process and their democracy. It's how they make decisions. So my fantasy, I had met on 82nd and Alpha's 5, and we're doing a lot of work with the communities along 82nd Avenue. So my fantasy was then how amazing it would be to have this free stage out in the park on 82nd and invite groups doing cultural work, doing performances to program it and basically have this gathering space, because in that area there's not a lot of gathering spaces that are open to multiple communities. They tend to be church specific or community specific. So that's the fantasy with the Rally for a Free Stage. And our first project is August 2nd. We're having an opening called Artists Not the Property of the Elite. So that's related. So if you're around August 2nd, we have an opening that's supposed to start the dialogue about what it would be to have a free stage out there. But it's about having that space to do this work. Not just the communities that have the wealth, but really all communities.
It's so important.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Don't ask it. I have to ask it a terrible question. It wants to ask. When I hear the word warrior, I think about war. And I think that there must be an enemy. And unless you're radically redefining what a warrior is, who's the enemy that we're fighting against as artist warriors? That's a provocative, terrible question.
Really, it's so
You
direct.
should feel free to kill me.
I want to kill you.
An aggression.
Aggression.
The setting western sun.
Illusion. I think we're fighting illusion. I think it's like war, as we know what modern warfare is just it's a trumped up, crazy, insane, psychopathic, insanity that everybody it happens, but it's based a lot on illusion. There's
I think it's a state of mind. I think it's not about facing an enemy, it's about facing all of everything that we tend to find challenging and difficult. So I think warriorship is a state of mind. It's kind of, I think of it as also as something I'm fighting something in myself that just wants to shrink from everything. If I would, that's the enemy in me.
Yes.
Just like crawl into the chair and pretend I'm not here,
Yeah, there's several people mentioned courage.
Yeah.
I think it's the forces that are dehumanizing us, and they take different forms. But and I think about it as in terms of the idea of the cop in the head. There's the idea when Boal was in Brazil and there was a dictatorship, there was guns and people, physically fighting. I mean, but when he went to Europe, he said, "It's so weird. There's not really oppression here." And then he discovered the level of suicide, the level of drug use, the level of abuse, the level of isolation that people, and loneliness people felt, and all these things were stopping people from living the lives that they wanted or doing the things that they want to do. So there's this idea that some of these things in the external world are lodged inside our heads, and even if they're not, if there's not someone here saying, "You can't do this, you can't stand up and say this," it's still a struggle, I think.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah.
Worth taking out there and wrestling with.
Thank you, writing them.
In the early days of process work that Kate was talking about, the Castaneda's idea of the spiritual warrior was very prominent. And I think at the time we didn't question whether there was something that we were. I remember not taking the warrior in terms of war, and yet it certainly has that